All right. So on that note, to start introducing our panelists, this evening, our panelists are going to kind of introduce themselves. We have some slides that we're going to throw up on the screen so you can have a visual aid of some of the things they might talk about when they're introducing themselves. Panelists, by no means do you have to go through everything on your slide. I have plenty of questions to ask during the panel that might reference back to some of those or some of the other things you answered on your questionnaire beforehand. To our viewers, our panelists do fill out a questionnaire beforehand, which is where we get this information from. So if we reference that, that is what we are referencing. And then on the bottom of each panelist slide, there's a green section that has a quote. That is their advice to their younger selves. And so hopefully at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for everybody to talk about theirs in a little bit more detail. And so this evening, it's going to be intros, questions, advice to themselves, talk about a little bit. And then at the end, we're going to actually have an online quiz and there are prizes. So definitely pay attention, not saying you have to take notes, but definitely pay attention. It's just a 5-question quiz, so it can't be too hard. All right. So to get started, panelists, I will pull up your slide, and if you don't mind introducing yourself, and in that introduction, your name, of course, current position and where you work, a little bit about what you do in that position, and then a little bit about your educational background. So who you are, what you do, where you work, and how you got there. And if that's not enough, one fun question, which is, what is your earliest memory of what you wanted to be when you grew up? So what was the thing you thought you wanted to be? All right, we're going to jump right in and start with Jake, if that's okay.
That's good. So I'm a water resources engineer at Wildlands Engineering. My background is in civil engineering and with specialty in water resources. I do stream restoration projects, wetland, stormwater, watershed projects, dam removals. I do a mix of design and project management, so keeping track of schedules and budgets for projects and assigning tasks and deadlines to our staff to get work done, and doing some of that work myself. Yeah, so we deal with like a lot of permitting, a lot of natural resources issues, yeah, public interface on projects sometimes. And it's not exactly my earliest memory of what I wanted to be, but I do have some memories of like when I was younger. My parents were pretty young and they were going back, they were in technical college, and I remember going down into a manhole during one of my dad's water technology classes that he was taking. And I probably must have been like 5 years old or something, but I guess that had an impression on me. And some of the projects that I did as a youngster were kind of coincided with stuff that he was doing in his classes and going out and monitoring different sites on the Milwaukee River in urban areas and rural areas and comparing the water quality on those. And so I guess maybe I was destined from an early age to do what I do. So.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. It does sound like you were destined for it. All right. Thank you, Jake. Next up, we have Jessie.
Good evening, everyone. Jessie McClain, project and field service manager for Xylem. Been with the company, be 8 years in June, I believe. I manage the customer facing projects within my department, as well as manage a team of 5 field service specialists to represent and travel around all of North America, or the US and Canada more specifically. They go out to the wastewater sites and help do startups and troubleshoot within the control panels that monitor and control the pumps and water level devices that are at those pump stations. Went to college at Olivet Nazarene, which is just an hour south of Chicago in Illinois, where I got my mechanical engineering degree. The earliest career, I think probably the earliest I can remember is I wanted to play in the WNBA. Grew up in Indiana, so Hoosiers, basketball, IU, Bobby Knight, if you guys know any of that stuff. But just growing up around basketball and playing it, I grew up thinking that I would make it to the WNBA, but turned out I'm a little too short for that. So did not pursue that, but went with water instead.
I think that's a great alternative as a fellow water worker.
I agree.
Thank you so much, Jessie.
Morgan, we lost your audio.
Thank you. Just realized. Sorry, Ryan, you're actually going last. It got moved all around. So sorry. But Taylor, if you wouldn't mind going next, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having like audio issues.
You're fine.
But my name is Taylor Mebane. I work for Mecklenburg County Stormwater Services. I'm an environmental specialist 3, and I mainly do education and outreach in my job now. So that's a lot of environmental education for public schools and all ages up to the oldest of the old and the youngest of the young. And I plan a lot of volunteer events. So I plan the Adopt a Stream and coordinate that program. I plan all the volunteer events you can find surrounding surface waters in Mecklenburg County. But then I also do sampling, water quality sampling. We monitor streams around the county, and we still are looking at specific parameters. So I do a little bit of everything, but the majority of my job is education and outreach. And my background is in a lot of things. I did not know what I wanted to be when I was a kid, and it took me up until late of college to figure out what I wanted to do. So I did a lot of things to figure that out. I think the earliest job I might have wanted was like a doctor singer, like something ridiculous and impossible. but yeah, that's mainly me and my background.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Taylor. All right, next up is going to be Erin. Here we go.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Erin Katzner, and I am the president and CEO of the Carolina Raptor Center. And I have a bachelor's degree from Ohio State University focused on wildlife management, and a master's degree focused on nonprofit administration from the University of Pittsburgh. And I, at the Carolina Raptor Center, I help to support all the staff and all the good work that everybody is doing to help inspire people to fall in love with raptors, and to practice rehabilitation of birds of prey that come into the center that are injured or orphaned, or, you know, for whatever reason that somebody has brought them into us. And so I'm very excited to be part of the organization. I just started there in September. And I love the fact that we are working to help the community and help get kids and adults excited about birds of prey, so that hopefully after making a connection with them at the Carolina Raptor Center, they'll want to do something to help protect them in the wild. And so that's what my job is all about. And I would say the very first thing I ever wanted to do, I remember very vividly learning about dinosaurs in kindergarten. And after that, I was convinced I wanted to be a paleontologist. until I got a summer volunteering job as a teenager at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, working in the bird show. And so that's when I evolved from dinosaurs to raptors, just like raptors evolved from dinosaurs to raptors. So I think it's kind of the perfect story of how I ended up where I am.
That's perfect. Thank you, Erin. I was hoping you would draw those two lines between raptors and dinosaurs. Ah, perfect. All right. And Ryan, last but certainly not least.
Oh, finally, I see my distinguished fellow panelists were a little bit more thorough in their question answering. My name is Ryan Carter. I have the great honor of calling Morgan Long not just only a friend, but a colleague at Catawba Riverkeeper. I'm a policy manager, so I work with elected officials in both North and South Carolina to help them make the most informed decisions possible, usually, hopefully, the most water-wise ones, but at least if they disagree with our stance, they know exactly why. So that's a little bit about my job. I also get to work with the community at large on informing them about different things that, how does policy relate to them? I love history and essentially studied the history of government in school. So that's kind of how I got into this field. And when I was a wee little lad, I wanted to be a chef. And then I learned that you had to know math and measurements, and I'm very bad at those. And I remember trying the first dish I ever just tried to cook, and it tasted terrible. And that's when I gave up on that short-lived dream.
Solid. Thank you so much, Ryan. It is always a joy to work with you in the office. It's a little questionable once we're on the water, but in the office, it's always safe. All right, I'm going to stop sharing those slides now so we can see our panelists front and center. All right, panelists, thank you so much for those introductions. I know it wasn't maybe the most normal where you weren't introduced to the group, but you introduced yourselves, so switching it up a little bit. I do have some questions for each of you, just kind of based on that background information that I thought our viewers might find unique or interesting or hopefully helpful on their career path journey. So to start off, Taylor, you mentioned that your work is very interdisciplinary. And so I know you said you work a lot with education, but also with like the volunteerism aspect and like people in the public. Can you elaborate on the variety of things you get to do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be here forever, but we do. So yeah, the main part is people outreach and the people part of the environment. And then I do a good amount of like data analysis on people, so some statistical stuff here and there. And then we also do a lot of field work, so we're kind of like in and out of the office 50-50%. So we are doing surface water sampling, we're looking at watersheds as a whole, and we're also looking for pollution sources around the county. So there's like a little bit of investigative work there. And then we are also enforcing the Clean Water Act through our different policies. So there's a little bit of policy there. So yeah, we're a bit all over the place.
You get to touch a little bit of everything, all the different departments.
I love it.
Oh, good, good. That's fantastic. Thank you, Taylor. All righty. And I feel like as we all talk more and more about what we do and the stuff we've shared already, hopefully people will start to see like a lot of what everybody here does is kind of interdisciplinary. Like even if you do work a specific position, sometimes you're pulled into other projects or other ideas and concepts. So yeah. All right. One of my next questions is for Erin. I keep looking down because my notes are down. I'll put them up. So one of our questions was regarding what surprised you about your career on the questionnaire. And you responded about the variety of things you've had the opportunity to be a part of. And I think my favorite quote was, "You've trained penguins, pelicans, and peregrines." But you've also managed multi-million-dollar projects and more. Can you share about one of your favorite career experiences so far?
Wow, I mean, it's kind of hard to pick just one because I have been really fortunate and I've worked in a lot of amazing places. But probably the most unexpected thing that I've done has been managing several multi-million-dollar construction projects. I never saw myself as becoming a construction manager, but that is part of what I did, both at the National Aviary and at the Peregrine Funds World Center for Birds of Prey. And it was to build out new exhibitry for the facilities, so that, you know, when the visitors would come, they'd be able to see the penguins on exhibit or see the peregrine on exhibit. Just realized that I'm doing a lot of alliteration with the letter P with both that quote and with what I just said. But I really have I felt very lucky that I've gotten the chance to do that and to, you know, work for years to bring a project to fruition, and then walk in one day and for the grand opening of these facilities that you've spent all this time working to build. And that's why, you know, one of the things that I said in my questionnaire is take the opportunity to try everything, every opportunity that comes your way. Because when my boss asked me if I wanted to manage the construction project, I said, but I'm a bird trainer. And he said, I know, but we need somebody who understands what the birds need. And so that's how I got into that role. And it's been extremely rewarding to not only get to build new facilities and get to be a part of the design and you know, manage the construction along the way, but also to get to see the visitors experience them for the first time. So it's something that I've never thought I'd want to do, but has ended up being one of the most fun parts of my career.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine working and doing all those things. So quite an accomplishment. Thank you, Erin. And then to jump over to Jake, you mentioned that you had worked on the Ward Mill Dam removal, and then you mentioned that it was in some of the Foxfire books. In what capacity were you working on that project, or is there anything fun you want to share about that project?
Sure. Yeah, that was a neat opportunity. We worked with a couple that were the current owners of the dam. They're in their late 80s. A lot of our projects involve working with private landowners and trying to kind of meet in the middle on what we're trying to accomplish and what, you know, they want to see happen on their property or don't want to see happen. And in this case, they had a dam that was built and for the first in the late 1890s and rebuilt a couple of times subsequent to that after floods or just to upgrade it. And that dam provided power to the it was the first light power electricity for lighting people's homes in the valley, and used to power a couple dozen homes in the valley before they became not possible for them to do that under FERC regulations. But yeah, I mean, that was it was a 20-foot tall rock and masonry dam that the gentleman's father had built with the help of a bunch of local folks. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rewarding parts of that. I mean, I think a lot of the rewarding parts of my job are the people side of it, and just being able to, I guess, kind of successfully navigate everybody's interests and you know, try to be a good communicator And then there's the side where, we got to remove the dam and see a river valley kind of re-exposed and all these boulders and things that were underneath the water and underneath sediment. And so, yeah, I mean, that project just had a lot of different, both technical and non-technical things that were pretty special to be a part of.
That's really neat. And to clarify for those that might not be familiar with dam removals, is it a giant blast like you see on the movies, or is it like a little bit more meticulous?
I think it still can be a giant blast at times, but the more typical way of taking down low head, smaller dams, which there are thousands and thousands of them, or especially along the East Coast and in the Piedmont, and is with a hammer hose, so like a excavator with a hydraulic, there's an attachment that goes on it that basically they just like put it up against the rock and start doing this with it, and it starts chipping away at the rock. And so, depending on the dam, you might be more careful about where you're opening it up, because there can be a lot of flow that comes through and there can be sediment that comes through. And but yeah, it's mostly mechanical with large yellow machines.
Thank you for clarifying. Sometimes I'm just like, I wonder if they just blow them or if they just go.
Hopefully one day.
Well, thank you so much, Jake. All right. My next question is for Jessie. So you mentioned on your form something that surprised you about your position was that you've reached the point that you're at so quickly. Like now you are managing other people and doing all the things. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Just I turned 30 actually Tuesday. And so just I guess reflecting on I was in college in my 20s, and now I'm a manager also in my 20s, like just thinking of like how much I've grown in the last 10 years has been surprising. You don't really realize that until you kind of look back and see your journey as you come to that point. But I've been lucky. I've been working in this department for 6 or 7 years, so the transition was easier in that regard, because I knew the people and I've known the people for years and they've known me. So the transition itself wasn't difficult, but thinking about the manager position and like managing people, you're kind of like, isn't an adult supposed to do that? And then you realize you are the adult type of situation. You're like, oh wait, maybe I am the adult and I can actually do this. But just embracing the confidence that people have in you and what they see in you as well as you are in this position, because they see things in you that you may not see in yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, do you manage, how do I say this? Xylem is a large company, and I know it stretches across the US and I think internationally as well.
Yeah, it's a global company. Mm-hmm.
There we go. So do you manage people mostly in the US, or do you manage people in other countries as well?
Yeah, so managing people in the US and a few people in Canada and stuff. So haven't quite learned the difference between working in Canada versus the US. Comes with the job. Still fresh in this newer position that I'm in, but I do know there's a difference. So that will be a big learning curve once it happens.
Yeah, I don't know that that's something we always think about if someone has to manage people in different countries.
Yeah, and then also if you travel to a specific work site, you have to consider their security and what the credentials that the person you're sending out there will need. Like for instance, there's a location in Canada. I'm sure there's locations all over Canada who require this, but someone had to take bear training before they went out to site. So don't see that every day. So you get to know, you ask the customer what's required for going out to this site. So it's not even like country specific sometimes. Sometimes it's site by site, depending on where you're at.
That makes sense. I would want bear training if I'm going out in the backcountry or anything.
Yes, very much. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessie. All right. And then next up is Ryan. So in your pre-panel form, you mentioned that something that surprised you about your career path is that no one that you know in your field really has the same career path. Everybody's a little bit different. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, the wide world of politics. Yeah, truly, there are some similarities, right? Like we all work on like a political campaign at some point, because that's good experience and you meet a lot of people. But everyone really has a different path, and that's okay. And frankly, that's a good thing, because it gives us all who work in this policy and advocacy, lobbying, whatever you want to call it, world. We all come with different perspectives. But there really isn't one like guaranteed way of getting things done. The accountants out there, I do envy you. You go out, you get your degree, and then you take that whatever test that it is you take, and then you go work for an accounting firm. I so wish that political careers were that linear, but they just aren't. I have friends who have worked campaigns forever, and then I've got friends that moved directly to DC or a state capital and just started working their way up. And then I did this weird thing where I said, I want to go work for nonprofits and do that instead. So we all play the same game, but it's like we're playing the same game, but with different cards. So like I've got my Uno cards. Someone else has Cards Against Humanity cards. Someone else has just a standard card deck. But they're all useful cards in this weird political game we play.
Thank you for sharing that. I do want to note, this is the first time out of 3 years now that the majority of the panelists actually went into the career that their degree is kind of similar to. The last couple years, it's just been complete opposites almost. So this was a really unique panel where everybody did follow on a similar path to what they went to school for, which is great. It's great either way. You get to where you get through your experiences. And so however those experiences get you there.
I mean, Morgan, if I could just chime in on that real quick. I was a huge disappointment to my department. I was supposed to go to law school, and everyone in my department was supposed to go to law school. And I was like, I want to go be a lobbyist. And they literally had no idea what to do with me. And, I took those classes. So even though it's still like in the government field, if you're out there and you're in college, you're thinking about going into it, like it's okay to take those lessons learned and apply them somewhere else. I don't want to go to law school. That sounds awful to me. I think attorneys make terrible legislators, and quote me on that. So yeah, just got to throw that out there that it's okay to, that's what I did. So.
And on that note, I should have mentioned this earlier, panelists, if you want to jump in at any point and add anything additional, please do so.
Well, I'll jump in and say that while I started in the bird field and I knew I wanted to be in the bird field, I did kind of switch boats midstream, in that I became an animal trainer and was responsible for all of the bird shows at the National Aviary. And then I kind of said to myself, okay, well, what's next? And that's when I went back to school to do a master's in nonprofit administration, so that I could get more into sort of the management side of things. And I'm really glad that I did do that, because it's allowed me to move up the ladder, so to speak, in the nonprofit world, but also to try different things. And So in addition to being an animal trainer, I also now have a lot of experience in marketing and construction management and all sorts of fundraising, all sorts of things that I didn't even know that I was interested in until I got into the working world.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, sometimes you definitely have to be in it before you realize there's other things that you might be more interested in or just as interested in. Thank you. Alrighty. Next up, ooh, Taylor. Also, my sister's name is Taylor, so every time I say this, I think I'm about to like make a joke or something, and I'm not. Taylor, what are your favorite programs to host? Do you have any that just bring you like so much joy when they happen?
Yes. My favorite event to host is stream cleaning. I especially love to get people who were not comfortable with being in the field or getting in a stream. I love to get them in just to get them over the initial fear of being in an element they're not used to. And plus, we find the craziest things, the craziest types of trash we find. I mean, things you would not believe. And it's always interesting. So.
Do you have an example of the wildest thing you think you found, or like a wild thing?
We have found like fully intact dentures, so that was fun. We found a gun, that was not as fun. But yeah, mostly we find really scary looking toys that have been abandoned. So.
Yes, like the baby dolls.
Oh yeah, the creepy baby doll.
We have a coworker who will like tie them to the front of his boat and then go around the rivers and the lakes. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you, Taylor, for sharing that. That does sound like a fun program to be a part of. And for anybody that's listening, you can volunteer with Stormwater.
That's
Wait.
right.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I thought that was like a no, you're wrong.
No, yes, everyone can sign up. Everyone can do it, all ages.
Yes. All right, jumping back over to Jake. So when you were at Auburn, you mentioned that you worked with the EPA a little bit over in Atlanta. What was that like? What were you doing? Anything?
Sure. Yeah, I was working in the Clean Water Act enforcement section and going to wastewater treatment plants and looking at what they were doing with their biosolids, which we could probably take a guess at what that might be. But people land apply it, they process it and turn it into like compost, and they do all kinds of stuff with it. And there's a lot of regulations that go behind that. I think that was one of the interesting things about working in that section of the EPA was like learning more about all the different Clean Water Act regulations and how they guide, that you're not allowed to bury streams and you're not, and that was stuff that was kind of new to me. And I was, at the same time as I was doing that, I was getting interested in some of the local watershed groups, and I was going back and forth to Atlanta every quarter, and so I'd go work and come back and work and come back. And when I was in Auburn, I was working with a couple different watershed groups, and one of them was fighting a quarry that was putting a quarry like right on the creek bank, and the other one they were doing water monitoring and stuff. And so it's kind of interesting how all those things end up overlapping with seeing developers, burying streams and like learning what the true regulations are and how you can actually like use that regulatory framework to make valid arguments about why people should and shouldn't be doing different stuff on the landscape.
Yeah, anytime I hear the term, well, before I started working with Riverkeeper, when I heard the term EPA, I was like, what? That sounds terrifying. This government agency, but they are here to help us. That's why they're there. All righty. And coming back to Jessie. Is there anything about working with water, working with technology or water technologies that surprised you or, I don't know, made you want to like delve deeper into something more?
Yes. So I'm gonna take it as like a two-part question. So as far as like the depth of the water world, Xylem being so huge as a global company and all the companies they own, they really take I guess like an over broadened view. Like they can take anything to do with water. They have a company that's involved in it, anywhere from like the piping to the rentals if there's an emergency, to just your regular water, wastewater, open up the tap and water's coming out. Xylem has companies that are involved in that, or water metering, anything you could think of, analyzing the water, as you guys have worked with, I think with YSI and stuff. So working for Xylem and how big of a company they are, it kind of get really immersed into how big the water world is, but at the same time small. It's very like, I like to say, like for a city is like a big town or a big city, but like a small town feel. It's kind of how the water world is. It's humongous field, but you kind of know everyone because it's still such a small group, stuff. So to that question, and then your last part, it was how did I get into what was interesting about the water?
Was there anything that made you want to like dive deeper?
Yeah, that's it. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to go to Africa a couple times. So the first time I went, it was to install a water irrigation system by we built it on top of a hill and then let gravity do the rest and kind of water some crops so that people could grow the crops, create an income for themselves as well as feed their family. And the coolest part, and this is pretty rare, is that I got to go back the following year and actually see the fields and the people like growing the crops. So I got to see the corn and everything and see like kind of not reap the benefits, but like I got to see my work or my team's work and see like the fruition. That's the word I'm thinking of. The fruition of all that. And I realized like I love that and I want to find a way to do that as my job, and stuff. And so that's what led me to look for kind of not necessarily environmental specific, but just making the world a better place and helping people any way I can. And Xylem's motto, like let's solve water. I'm like, yes, that makes sense to me. And the fact they have a watermark charity that they own, and so like you can sign up and you can go all over the world and install water towers and help make a world a better place and help solve water, bring water to those less fortunate as well. And the CEO, Patrick Deckard, like being so passionate about that and actually solving water. It's not just a motto, it's a lifestyle for him and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what led me to Xylem and diving deeper into the water world. Like, oh, that was really cool to give this to people. How can I do this to not just third world countries, but like the US, to like my neighborhood, and how can I give back? And there's water issues everywhere. Where's the most localist place that I can find for that?
Yeah, that's amazing that you went and did that and got to see it happen and it drove you to where you are today. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that. To be honest, I have more questions for all of you, but I also know we have to like cut off at 8:30. So I do have a question for the general group. And I know you have advice to your younger selves, but this would be more like, what is some advice you would give someone that's trying to find their place in the environmental industry? Maybe they don't know exactly what they want to do. Maybe they do know. Any advice you can give on that? And just popcorn around if anybody wants to go.
So I know for me, I thought I wanted to work more in the zoo world, but because I started as a teenage volunteer at the Columbus Zoo. But one of the things that was really valuable to me was trying other things. And so I also volunteered with the Ohio Division of Wildlife, and I had a paid job working at a local veterinary clinic. And so I tried a few other things in the animal world just to see where the fit felt right. And it was definitely, for me, you know, working in sort of the informal education and working in zoos for the short time. Eventually I ended up at a conservation organization and then came to Carolina Raptor Center. But at an early age, trying different things was very helpful. And so I highly recommend, you know, taking advantage of the opportunities to volunteer and intern at different places.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think the best thing to do is to go with what you're passionate about, and you'll likely find a path in an environmental field that aligns with it. For me, it was people. While I started out in an engineering field, I hated everything that I was doing. And then I took a sociology class and realized people are something that I need to focus on. But then I tried a lot of different majors in college. And then when I graduated, I tried a lot of different jobs. I did a lot of internships in all different kinds of fields just to see what I hated. And I found a lot of things I didn't like. And then I found a vein that I really did like. And then I pursued it all that I could. So really just going for what you're passionate about will take you a long way. Makes the work not seem like work.
I will be a good politico and piggyback and say what everybody else has said in a different way. I think it's really important, and especially in my field, to know what you don't want to do. No one says, man, I can't wait to be a corrupt politician or a dirty, sleazy lobbyist that does like bad things. But it's easy for us to sell ourselves on compromises of, okay, well, if I just do this and then this and then this. So knowing what you don't want to do and what you won't do, I think has been really important in my life, and having those within that, know what you don't want to do, having that diverse field of perspectives. I used to work for Habitat for Humanity. I was the housing lobbyist, right? You know, I was a home builder, and now I do conservation, but there's still land use. And so I understand, you know, I'm literally working with the North Carolina Home Builders Association on water quality policy right now, but it's because I understand their world and how they operate. So, you know, you can have a conservation mindset and still work in a non-conservation field, knowing that that's where I would love to go. I volunteered for Riverkeeper when I had just graduated college, and I was not in a position to get hired by them. But I took that conservation mindset, what I learned from Riverkeeper, and then, you know, I finally got to a point where I was the guy for the job. So it was having that experience. So know thyself, know what you won't do, what you don't want to do, and then being open to other experiences, as Erin and Taylor said.
The other thing I would add to that, and this comes from something Jessie said earlier about, you know, the water world being a small world, and you get to know a lot of people, and you get to know who the players are and stuff, is no matter what, don't burn bridges, because everybody in in the environmental field knows everybody else, and or knows somebody who knows everybody else. So, keep good relationships, and don't be afraid to use those relationships too. I got to where I am today because I knew a lot of really great people along the way who helped me get there. And so don't be afraid to use those relationships, because someday you'll get the chance to give back and help other people move forward in their careers. So yeah.
Last addition to what Erin said, but I was at a party and this annoying finance bro kept saying that your net worth is your net worth. And I hate that he was so correct in that assessment. And in politics, it for sure is true. Every job I've gotten is because I'm able to call up elected officials on their cell phone and say, because they trust me and they know me. So getting out and talking to people is so critical. In conservation world, yes, Erin is 1000% right. We all talk to each other. And in the political world, we for sure talk to each other, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, I don't care what you are, vegan, doesn't matter your political aspirations, everyone talks. So your reputation is key.
Thank y'all so much. That was fantastic advice. I agree with all of it. I followed some of it trying to get to where I am as well. So great advice. All right. And then before we're doing good on time. Before we jump to your advice for your younger selves, is there anything that I didn't touch on or ask about that any of the panelists would like to share, whether it's related to anything career path, education, experiences, what they're doing now, something you might want someone to know? It's a very open-ended question.
I would highly recommend that everybody learn how to write, and write well, because that can get you a long way if you can write and convince people of your passion through your writing. That is a skill set that every environmental organization needs. And then I would also recommend the same for public speaking, is work on becoming a good public speaker, because the way you're able to represent yourself in front of a room full of people goes a long way when it comes to getting recognized in your field and moving up in your career.
That's great advice, Erin. Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Oh, I see those snaps, positive snaps. Perfect. All right. So we do still have a couple minutes before we switch over. So, and I have a couple more questions for you all. Didn't think you'd get out early. So jumping over to Ryan, you talk to a lot of elected officials. I know you go to DC sometimes, Columbia. Is your work solely inside, or do you get to do things in the field, so to speak?
Oh my gosh, I with all due respect to my fellow panelists, I have the coolest job. So like I was down on, for Mecklenburg, York, and Lancaster County folks, you'll know I was down on Sugar Creek on Tuesday paddling. And I get to go out there and I take pictures. I will literally just lean back in my kayak and I will take a picture of something and I will email it to every elected official in that area. I'll be straight up. Little Sugar Creek Greenway, I hate it. They were driving bulldozers in the creek to finish the project. I sent it to every county commissioner, the county manager, and I was furious because at the expense of water quality and aquatic habitat, they were building the greenway, and I just don't care enough about greenways at any cost. So very upset about that. Thank you, Taylor, and your colleagues at Stormwater Services for humoring me and forwarding my emails to the appropriate sources. So yeah, I do get to do that. And Part of, I know I spoke earlier about my brand, but in politics, you have to be able to speak the local narrative, the local dialect. And I don't have, I mean, our basin is very large and there's a lot of different dialects and a lot of different preferences, and I can't speak all of them. But if I can know your creek just as well as you do, and in some cases better, you can't argue with that. So because of that, I get to spend a lot of times out on the Catawba's most polluted creeks. So next time you're on the Greenway, look down on the water. I might be there.
You very well might, especially if you're near the Oxbow Lake on Little Sugar Creek. All right. And then a similar question to Jessie. Over your years of working with Xylem, do you feel like you've spent the amount of time you would like to in the field? Do you think you'd want to spend more time, or how's that go?
Yeah. Me personally, I would love to be out in the field. We go see so many different, or not every pump station is the same. So no matter where you go, it's going to be completely different. For example, on up by New Jersey, their pump stations are all in gazebos, elevated gazebos, because of a hurricane that came through. Then you traveled to Canada one time and went to a hydro turbine dam system, and I saw a bald eagle fly over it with some raccoon and her family running across the dam. And so it's, no matter where you go out in the field, it's very different. So I definitely would not mind traveling. It's just, dogs at home, you still want to do some work in the local area and get some work done, unfortunately, with some emails and the admin things. But no, being out in the field, getting a face-to-face exposure to what's around you as opposed to just being behind a computer is very valuable. And honestly, love it. It's a lot to learn every time you go out there.
Awesome. Yeah. There's a lot to be said for responding to emails on time and doing admin work. So that is just as important. And for some of us, maybe we just want to be behind the computer the whole time and not doing field work. So there's a lot of positions that allow for both or either or. Actually, not either or. If you find a job where you don't have to respond to emails, can you email me about it?
Same.
Yep, Jessie too. Just CC us. Jumping over to Jake with a similar question. I know you've talked a little bit about some of your field work, but do you find yourself more often in the field, more often in the office? How's that look for you?
Yeah, I think, these days, so I've been doing what I've been doing for like 20 years now. And so kind of at a different phase in my career, whereas early on I was learning how to use survey equipment and doing topographic surveys and geomorphic surveys and learning how to put gauges out in creeks. And these days, I'm going to, I do some construction management, go meet with clients about new projects and trying to figure out, well, what would need to happen to make this into a project, or what would this project look like and what would it cost. And so it's a lot of my trips out to the field are to prepare for scoping or kind of helping figure out what the next steps are. And sometimes it's going out in the field to meet with landowners and look at what you're talking about. And so it's a pretty good mix. There's definitely a lot of computer work required behind engineering and design work. But I think there's also some ability within our company. There's folks that they mainly want to do field work, and they kind of point themselves in the direction of being the person that goes out and does construction observation kind of full time on one or more projects, or being the person that does field assessment work and spends more time in the field. And you know, a lot of those folks work really hard and spend time driving, a lot of time driving, and a lot of time, you know, long days in the field. So
That's awesome. I'm glad you get a mix of both. I'm sure it's interesting going out and talking to different landowners too, because I feel like every personality is a little different.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's super fun, that the people side of it. I mean, you get to interact with, you know, folks doing construction, and from the workers to the foremen, and you know, get to interact with municipal employees, and folks managing things, and folks, you know, working for nonprofits, trying to figure out how to get different work done. And so yeah, there's a lot of fun opportunities to interact in different ways. And then there's also tricky stuff when you start, you know, some of the landowner stuff can be really challenging. And but at the same time, just, I mean, I just try to be genuine about it, and like try to help like find good middle ground.
Yeah, being that diplomat. Thank you so much. Taylor, similar lines. Do you find yourself more often in the field, behind the computer? Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
That's a good question. I'd say I'm close to like a 60-40 split, where more time is spent in the office now. I started off like probably like 90% in the field, and now the higher you get, the more administrative work you gotta do. So there's that side, but I still spend a decent amount of time in the field. It depends on the time of the year. So if it's like a sampling time of the year, or we're doing stream walks, then we're in the field a good amount. If it's more downtime where less people are out looking for problems, then we are trying to catch up on computer work. So it depends.
I feel like we're on similar seasonal cycles.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Taylor. And then Erin, for you as well, do you find yourself in the field, in the office?
Yeah, so since I'm so new to the Carolina Raptor Center, I've been in the office an awful lot, but it's all been really fun, exciting things, you know, figuring out how we're going to set up the foundation for growing the organization. And then in the field for me looks a lot like going out and meeting with donors, or going to meetings to connect with other people who are interested in what we're doing, and or who we might be able to collaborate with. And so it's not quite as, you know, exciting as being out in nature, but I do try to get out into nature for whenever I take vacations, and do field work. My husband is a raptor biologist, and so I tag along with him when he goes to cool places. Like one year we went to Denali and spent the week flying around in helicopters, going from Golden Eagle nest site to Golden Eagle nest site, putting telemetry tracking units on the birds. And we've done similar work in Tasmania and in Kazakhstan. So I do try and get out to wild places so that I can remember exactly why I do what I do, and remember that connection to the wild birds that I'm passionate about. But a lot of my job today, as you know, the president and CEO of an organization, is more in the office, or more behind the desk, and a lot less hands-on than it used to be. But I love it. So I just make sure to get my hands on fixes at other times.
That's great. I want to share the first time I saw Erin, I don't think I met you that day, but you were in our office, and you actually had a bird shirt on. And I was like, oh, she's got it. She knows where it's at.
Yeah, I've been in the bird world for about 35 years now. And so I've got a lot of bird clothing. I have no shortage of bird stuff.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for sharing and answering all my questions. I think at this point, I want to come job shadow pretty much each of you, just to get that hands-on experience and see what you see on a day-to-day, because it sounds pretty awesome. So before we get to our quiz, I would love if everybody could share their advice to their younger selves. So I am going to screen share again so you can see what you wrote. I don't expect you to remember it. Let me make this full screen. There we go. All right. Can everybody see that okay? All right. Brian, you get to be first this time. So down at the bottom in the green is the quote you submitted for advice to a younger self. And if you just want to read that, and if you want to add anything to it or elaborate, feel free to do so.
Oh man, that one hits home deep. So I graduated college and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I kept setting deadlines for myself, and not like fun deadlines. It was like, well, I will have a job by this time. And that day would come, and then I'd get hella depressed and sad, and then it all started over again. But if I had a principal who talked about the difference between excellence and perfection, and that perfection is this mechanical thing that is frankly impossible, but excellence is knowing that you've done the best you can, and that's good enough. That has to be good enough for you. So be easy on yourself. It's okay. You're doing the best that you can. So this is a crazy world out there. And, you know, even for us that work in, you know, conservation world, like climate change is terrifying. And like every time it rains, I'm thinking about, wow, that creek is getting blown out even more and more. So just to be gentle with yourself and know that you're doing the best that you can. I think I don't know, that's the biggest thing for me.
That is great advice. Thank you, Ryan. Sorry. Thank you, Ryan. All right. Next up, Jake, if you wouldn't mind going next.
All right. So I said to find a place with good mentors and teachers to help you learn. And that's probably, I feel like I spend a lot of time like trying to teach myself stuff, you know, and that's good. I think it is good to push yourself to try to teach yourself stuff, but it's also, I guess part of me is like wonders like where I would be if I had been in a place early on that had like a lot of mentorship or people kind of helping you progress with your stuff. And I'm sure I had a lot of that, but I also had times when I didn't have that. And I know that I spent a lot of time trying to teach myself stuff. And in some ways, I feel like that's benefited me to be where I am now and force myself to learn stuff faster and figure it out on my own and to know how to do that. And then the other thing I said was to be organized and deliberate. And I guess there's kind of like, I think, an interesting aspect of engineering is like having the creativity and kind of the like creating the freedom at sometimes to like try to think about things in a non-mechanical way and be innovative about what you're doing. But then there's such an aspect of it to being organized and keeping track of deadlines and trying to do things efficiently. And so like organization, I feel like helps efficiency, and it's something I still haven't gotten that good at, but it's like but there's a place for that to like figure out your methods and how to run through the things that you need to be mechanical about in an efficient and organized way, and then create the space for the other stuff when that's appropriate.
Yeah, that's great, Jake. Organization is key. Definitely. All right. Next up is Jessie.
Yeah, I'm like, Jake, I need to read what I put. I think I wrote like a few things and deleted and like submitted this one. Yeah, so to be comfortable being uncomfortable in your job. Graduate with a mechanical engineering degree, and me being a female, then I'm instantly a minority in a like male dominated industry. And so you kind of feel like you need to just stick with your strengths all the time in order to prove that you can do it just as well as a guy. Sorry, jumping on this panel, but just you kind of naturally just want to stick with what you know, but you can't really grow or discover which direction you want to go or who you want to be when you grow up if you just stick with what you know. And it's okay to be uncomfortable and not knowing how to do something. And then that leads into the next point is at the end of the day, people don't care if you don't know, as long as you care about solving the problem. And they know that you are willing to put in the effort. If they feel like you're going to leave them high and dry on anything, then they will care. But as long as you show that compassion and understand where they come from, and you're willing to put in the effort, that's all they really care about. So kind of goes hand in hand. They don't care if you don't know. So it's okay to be uncomfortable just as long as you're willing to put in that work.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, we sometimes get really stuck on what people are thinking about us or what we have to do next. And sometimes we don't know, and it's okay to say that or to do that. Thank you, Jessie.
Mhm.
All right, let me jump back here. Here we are. Erin, if you wouldn't mind going next.
Yeah, sure. So never be afraid to try things. That kind of goes back to the whole construction management thing. I remember when I was still pretty young in the field, and I was a bird trainer at the National Aviary and was being offered the opportunity to be the manager of my department. And I remember having a long phone conversation with my dad about not feeling like I had what it took to be a manager, and not feeling like I had enough experience and not knowing what to do. And he said, well, what's the harm in trying? And so I've tried to carry that through, and by trying new things and things that set me outside of my comfort zone, kind of like Jessie was saying, I've been able to grow and expand my experience in ways that I never could have imagined that I would do. So that's important. And then always giving people the benefit of the doubt is something that one of my mentors taught me a long time ago. He said to me, Erin, there are very few people in this world who are out to get you. And so I took that to heart, and it's been very helpful. And it's something I'm constantly repeating to my team, give people the benefit of the doubt, because it's easy when you're working in a team, when you're working in a group of people to, get your feelings hurt, to accidentally hurt somebody else's feelings. But in our world, in the nonprofit world, and in the environmental world, often we're working towards the same goal. We might have different ways of getting to a solution, and it's important to listen to all of the different ways that people have in mind so that you can find the best way, because it's the way that I came up with and what I think will work, or maybe what I have experienced with working, doesn't mean that there's not potentially an even better way. So giving people the benefit of the doubt that we're all in this together, we all want this, we all want good things to happen, and not, not getting overly caught up in yourself as you're moving along.
That's great advice as well, Erin. Thank you. Here we go. Taylor, I'll give you a second to reread if you need to.
Yes, I often overwrite. So let's see what I said. Yes, so I kind of mentioned it before. I wish that I had chosen to figure out what exactly it was that I liked versus what the people around me liked and what seemed interesting to other people to do. I wish I had not spent so much time going down avenues for other people when I could have focused on myself more, and maybe got to the point faster. I won't say it was a waste of time because I think I learned a lot doing different fields and pursuing different paths, but I do feel like I did myself a disservice early on in my education for my undergrad, pursuing stuff for other people. In reality, that never mattered. And it's hard to be successful in something that you have no passion for. So that was my advice to myself. I think I spent a lot of time motivated by fear, which is a terrible motivator because it's really hard to get places if you're motivated by fear. And in this field, I did not see myself a lot. It's hard to see women, as Jessie mentioned. It's hard to see Black people in this field, and it's underrepresented still. But I think going for what I was passionate about and pursuing that direction is what has gotten me to be in the position that I'm in now. And I wanted that more for my younger self. So, yeah.
That's so great. Oh, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing now. We're not done quite yet, but I do want to go ahead and extend a huge thank you to our panelists for being here tonight and for taking the time and just for providing so much thought and ideas and advice throughout this whole panel. We'll do the quiz in just a second.